Hey, what's up guys? My name is Red Skipper and today I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth on how to be a better Total War player. Now, for those of you who have not yet seen my original guide, I recommend that you go check that out and I will put a link in the description. Don't worry, you can pause this video. It's not going to be going anywhere. You can go ahead and watch that and come right back and this video will still be here. So for those of you that have seen my original guide, I'm going to go ahead and discuss the first step of the pyramid, which is knowing your factions. So, to me, knowing your factions falls into three major categories. One, knowing your nation's unit composition. Number two, knowing your nation's strengths and weaknesses. And number three, knowing what nation you should play with and against, and knowing what nations you should not play with and against with your nation. So with these three elements, you will easily be able to master your nation of choice and be able to play them to their max potential later on. So let's go ahead and discuss these three concepts. So the first concept is your unit composition. So what does this mean? You're going to go ahead and go into game and you're going to go and check all your units out and see what your nation is bringing to the table. Whether it's a cavalry nation, a infantry nation, a guard nation, anything like that you can possibly use to your strengths later on in your builds. So if you have a cavalry nation, you're going to want to stick to your nation's cavalry as your superior unit. If it's a infantry nation, you should probably bring a lot of infantry. And if you have a guard nation, you're going to want to have a good amount of guards in your army because all of these units will win your battle and will play your nation to its max ability. So, number two, your nation's strengths and weaknesses. Now this is sort of a build off of number one because your nation's unit composition is going to be the deciding factor in your nation's strengths and weaknesses. Such as if you have a cavalry nation, your strengths is going to be in your cavalry, and if you have a guard nation, your nation is going to be in your guards, and if you have an infantry nation, your strength is going to be in your infantry, etc. So, what are we going to do with these strengths and weaknesses when building an army? When building an army, you're going to want to stay away from your nation's weaknesses and play towards its strengths, such as if you have a cavalry nation, you're going to want to play more of the nation's cavalry than infantry, and if you have a guard nation, you're going to want to bring a few more guards than you normally would, and if you have a infantry nation, you're going to want to play more infantry than you do cavalry. So, number three, what to play your nation with and against and what not to play your nation with and against. Now this is a little tricky as it depends more on the player and not so much as the faction. But in a general rule, if you are taking a cavalry nation, your partner should stay away from taking a cavalry nation and should play more of a support role with infantry or guard. Just like if you have a guard build, your partner should play a infantry nation or a cavalry nation and not an infantry nation. And if you have an infantry build, your partner should play a cavalry nation or a guard nation to support you. So what should we look to play our nations against? It's kind of like rock, paper, scissors, where cavalry beats infantry, infantry beats guards, and guards beat cavalry. However, this is not true in all cases because there are an inconceivable amount of variables that will happen in-game, and as I stated before, it really does depend on the player. Not only this, but the best builds will consist of a good mix of cavalry, normal infantry, and guards. However, this system does remain mostly true because of the fact that cavalry will usually beat out lightly armored and not so high attack and defense infantry, and the lightly armored and not so high of attack and not so high of defense infantry can usually outmass a guard army, and the guard army will usually be able to defend against a cavalry army because of the fact that they have that extra attack and defense and armor. So what should we avoid playing our nations with? We really want to avoid massing one unit type because then our enemy can exploit that unit type's weakness and destroy our army. Similarly, we should also avoid going against the rock, paper, scissors system, playing cavalry nations against guard nations against infantry nations, and infantry nations against cavalry nations. Now again, this of course is not true because it mostly depends on the player. So let's recap what we have. We have our nation's unit composition, our nation's strengths and weaknesses, and what we should and should not play our nation with and against. Now if you liked the video, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.